Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Business Success Series presented by Manulife. And today, the topic is, what does the metaverse mean for business? My name is Ian McLean. I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Before we do get started, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that we do live and work on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, as we seek a renewed relationship based on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As participants in today's virtual event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the same respect and opportunity, regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope you will join us in fostering a positive environment here today that is a safe and welcoming space for all. We know there's more that we can do, and we are committed to listening, learning, and growing as we go. Today's session would not be possible without the continued support of our sponsors. So a special thank you today to our title sponsor for the Business Success Series, Manulife, our platinum sponsor for the series, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region. These organizations and many others that support the Chamber are committed to supporting our local economy and providing businesses with the resources and tools they need to thrive. Just before the session starts, I'd like to go over a few quick reminders. Please ensure your microphone is muted throughout the presentation so we can reduce any background noise. If you have a tech-related question, please comment in the chat section, and a representative of the Chamber will be back to you momentarily. If you have a question for today's speaker, I'll gather those throughout the session and try and do our best to get that question answered throughout the presentation. All attendees will be sent a recording of today's presentation. It will also be made available on the Greater KW Chamber website. I would now like to introduce today's guest, Brent Arnold. Brent Arnold is a partner practicing in Gowling WLG's advocacy department, specializing in cybersecurity and commercial litigation. Brent heads the firm's commercial litigation technology subgroup. He also leads cybersecurity initiatives for the firm's financial services regulatory group and is a member of its InsurTech and TechTO groups. He co-authored the Canada chapter of Chamber's Global Practice Guide, Data Protection and Cybersecurity, second edition, and the first edition of Chamber's Global Practice Guide, FinTech, in 2022. Brent's experience also includes cybersecurity coaching, cybersecurity risk, class actions defense, consumer protection, implementation, and other disputes for e-commerce vendors and software developers, administrative and insolvency law, shareholders' rights, class actions, and general contractual disputes. He has appeared before all levels of courts in Ontario, including the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court of Canada, and has appeared before numerous administrative tribunals. He's also arbitrated in several proceedings before the American Arbitration Association. He currently serves as Corporate Secretary and Director of the Internet Society, the Canadian chapter, and Vice Chair of the Cybersecurity and Privacy Committees of both the US-based Defense Research Institute and the Ontario Bar Association. Brent is a member of the Canadian Technology Law Association, the International Association of Privacy Professionals. In 2022, he became a member of the invitation-only International Association of Defense Counsel. So welcome, Brent. It's so good to have you. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. And as we said before we started, this is an area that I know, I'm going to be completely honest, I know absolutely zero about, but I'm really fascinated by it because this is something that we're seeing more of. I mentioned to you that I'm seeing more of people talking about the metaverse, and I think one of the reasons it's important for us to have this conversation is many of our chamber members that might be watching today and saying, don't know what it is. But it's one of those things that is obviously growing in parts of the economy, and really the issue that I think we want to try and get is how could any small or medium-sized business that's watching today, in particular, understand what it is and is it applicable for their business? Because that's really, and it won't be for everyone, I assume, but we're going to find out. But I think this is one of those one of those reasons we have sessions like this is, for me, I've read about the metaverse mostly just in the paper. There's a passing article on metaverse, or someone bought art but it's not really art. It's not, and I don't really understand the background of it. And I think this is why it's important to have these discussions, so that we educate ourselves about what effectively is advancements in technology. This is new advancements in technology. So having set that up, because I wanted to make sure that our listeners and you knew, I'm going to ask some very what appear to be dumb questions, because technology is not usually my thing, and this is totally brand new. So I wanted to ask some of those, well, maybe not dumb questions, but basic questions, so that we get at this. And let's start. And thank you for taking the time. I know how busy you are, and this is a fascinating discussion. But maybe in the way to start is in your own words, what is the metaverse? Like, if you were gonna, maybe not quite an elevator pitch, but in shorthand, how would you describe what the metaverse is?
Well, thank you for that. I should say there are no dumb questions. We are at a stage in the metaverse where people are where we were with NFTs 2 years ago and cryptocurrency 5 years ago, where everyone is talking about it and most of us don't really know what it is yet. So by the end of this, hopefully we're all in a better position, because it is something that's being talked about in loose terms. And it's really not fully formed yet, even as a concept. And I'll probably illustrate that by trying to answer your question first. I'm actually not going to use my own words, because I want to use, because this is so fluid and so confusing, I want to use the terms, the way it's defined in Investopedia, which is probably a trusted tool for a lot of your members. And then I'm going to unpack it a bit. So here's how Investopedia describes the metaverse. The metaverse is a digital reality that combines aspects of social media, online gaming, augmented reality, virtual reality, and cryptocurrency to allow your users to interact virtually. Augmented reality, I'm going to show you an example in a minute, overlays visual elements, sound, and other sensory input onto real-world settings to enhance your experience of the real world. Contrast that with virtual reality, which is entirely virtual and enhances fictional realities. So that's how Investopedia defines that. Now, what does all that mean? So the metaverse as a concept is only half-baked. We're still figuring out what it means. And and people mean different things when they talk about it. One version of it, which you saw in that definition, is what we call augmented reality. And I'm going to show you an example of this that will hopefully bring it a little bit more to life. I don't know how many of you remember a movie called The Minority Report from about 2010, I think. There's a great scene where Tom Cruise is walking through, and let me know if you can see this now. He's walking through a concourse. He's being pursued. This is set in the future. As he's walking through this corridor, visual sensors are scanning his retinas, identifying who he is. And because the computer and AI behind those sensors know a lot about him, they are projecting holographic ads suited to his particular interests and tastes. Not unlike you get on Facebook. After a lot of browsing, you start to see ads that are relevant to things you were searching for. This is what augmented reality looks like. You have a digital overlay on top of the real world. You're passing through the real world, but you're seeing images and data, advertisements, all that stuff, and you can interact with them. Augmented reality. Now, what will this look like for us? It's probably not going to look like holograms popping up in the hallway. It's probably going to look like you walking down the hallway wearing a pair of Google glasses or something like that. And on the lenses of the glasses or the headset you're wearing will be these images that are being projected to you as you interact with the real world. Augmented reality. Now let's look at some examples of virtual reality. And now these are, and we were talking just before we started this, we realized that your coordinators' kids are already participating in the metaverse because they are doing online gaming. And that's one of the places where you see this. If any of you have children who play on a video game platform called Roblox, they are already participating in the metaverse. Roblox is a platform where you create an avatar or a version of yourself that moves through this fictional digital reality, and you would go to different worlds, play different games, and interact with other people in the form of avatars. And you can buy things, not real things. We'll come to that in a second. But you can, I mean, it's in the example of Roblox. You can go to the Shoppers Drug Mart, buy a Robux certificate, and put in the input code. And it allows you to buy clothing and accessories for your avatar. What can you do with those? Nothing outside of the game, but you can upgrade your avatar inside the game. So you're already participating in commerce in this virtual space. So that's a sort of a basic and widely seen example of it. Beyond that, you have, and there's many competing platforms in this virtual reality space. We don't know which one's going to be dominant or if there's going to be a dominant one. But right now, there's a bunch of different ones, all at different levels of sort of development and size. Here's one. Some of you will remember a few months back when Facebook suddenly became Meta overnight. Meta is aiming towards this kind of experience. And the notion is you'll be doing your social media and your gaming and everything else inside this virtual reality experience, not just looking at, scrolling through Facebook. So you can see here, here's sort of their splash page showing you some of the things that will be available. Another popular one is Sandbox. And as we'll see, this is one that's been a popular place for businesses to set up and to buy virtual real estate. And we'll come to that in a second. This is one called Blocktopia, a little bit slicker looking. And this is essentially one aimed at cryptocurrency people. You see here, Blocktopia is a skyscraper made of 21 levels, blah, 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 blah. Token holders will be known as Blocktopians. It will act as a central hub welcoming all levels of crypto experience. So this is a sort of a cryptocurrency community-centered one. This one is a little bit more broad in its application, and this is the one I'm going to show you a brief example of later, called Decentraland. And this is where we are seeing companies and brands that you will know already setting up. We're also seeing, and this is of interest to me, small businesses like law firms, personal injury firms, for instance, setting up virtual offices in this platform to interact with consumers, clients, potential consumers. So that sort of hopefully gives you an idea of what this is all about. Sorry for the long answer to the simple question, but I think the detail helps.
Well, I don't think there's anything simple about it because I think there's multi layers there to it. I want to ask this question, and we'll get back because we've got some other things. But
sure,
as it relates to cryptocurrency, I mean, we've been seeing a lot actually in popular political discussion now about. You got the central bank, and I don't want to go into the difference between what crypto could do versus the central bank and its interest rates. But is crypto? I mean, the notion that crypto is a place that people want to come together and have that experience in the metaverse. Is this a place where things start? The metaverse where things really are developed right at ground level and then sort of build up, because some of these things are not, I wouldn't say widely used or like cryptocurrency. It is a niche right now. But you see that, I guess what I'm asking is this got the opportunity to start the metaverse and then become more of an accepted and more utilized by like, as an example, small business owner, a medium-sized business owner, they're the consumers that are their customers?
So short answer, yes. And it's a smart question, but let me back up and explain quickly how all this fits together. First thing to know is cryptocurrency is an application or a use of blockchain technology. Blockchain technology, we won't get into too much detail on this, it's a technology that's a coding technology where essentially the information, it's called distributed ledger, which means anyone can sort of get into the guts of it and see it, and all the transactions are traceable and you can follow them through the blockchain and you can't change them. This is why people like blockchain and some people like cryptocurrency. Is the notion is a transaction is immutable. It can't be faked. It can't be simulated. So they say. It's more complicated than that. So anyway, crypto is an application of blockchain. Metaverse platforms like the ones I just showed you are built on blockchain technology. So I'm going to show you Decentraland in a few minutes. It is based on an Ethereum blockchain, and that's a competitor to there's a few different ones, but that's one of the most common ones. So first of all, the metaverse is made of blockchain. Same as cryptocurrency is a kind of blockchain. Second of all, you use cryptocurrency in the metaverse to carry out commerce. You can buy virtual real estate. Like, so if you want to set up your business, a virtual storefront where people can come in, look at your products, possibly even buy them online. The medium for all of that is going to be cryptocurrency. You're going to buy your virtual land in cryptocurrency, and you're going to be selling and buying products and services in the metaverse using cryptocurrency, sometimes using a token that's sort of specific to the platform that you can buy with a more universal one like Bitcoin or some of the other ones. There's lots of them. So the short answer is it's made of the same stuff as crypto, and crypto is what allows you to transact business if you actually want to do transactions in the metaverse. And yes, I think it's absolutely a way for small businesses to get involved in this, because crypto is it's a bit esoteric. If you have a brick and mortar store, people come in, they buy things using money. There's really no place for crypto. You're not taking crypto over the counter, not that you could. But if you're selling through a virtual store in the metaverse, you can be transacting using cryptocurrency, and there's no real barrier to entry, big or small business, to do that.
So I think back to the beginning of COVID, and I would say most businesses either were not online or had very rudimentary ability to do online commerce. It just wasn't. Yeah. It was more of a website wasn't e-commerce, although I guess we categorized it as such. But it was really there for information, so to try and attract something.
True.
That changed in these 26 months as people very quickly said, I better be able to sell somebody when they come to my splash page. So, but now we're into this environment you're talking about, which is, again, as very helpful. Online, it's got crypto-based, augmented reality, but gaming too. And you're seeing, maybe more kids do, although lots of people do gaming. Is the connection point when you're in the metaverse and as you say, you virtually buy some land or a store. Are you actually selling to, like, I'm going on and I happen to be gaming and say, oh, well, I need to buy a sweater and I like the sweater that's on, or the whatever the service is. Are you actually buying a service? Like, does it translate to the real world, if you will, or is it all in this virtual reality?
Short answer, depends. I'm a lawyer, so that's always going to be my answer. So let me give you some examples, because there's a sort of a continuum here, right? First of all, let's talk about the entirely in-game universe aspect of it. You can go into a virtual Nike store, let's say, and buy some virtual Nike sneakers for your avatar. You can buy a nice Louis Vuitton bag that your avatar can carry around in the metaverse. And in the metaverse, let's not forget, you're not just sort of tooling around, gaming, going to concerts, doing that sort of a thing, although you can do all those things. You can also go to a virtual meeting. And this is where the technology is eventually going, right? Is that you will use this for, theoretically, everything. I will use this as a place where I play. I'll go see concerts perform virtually, and it'll be their avatars playing, but they'll be playing the music. I will then the next morning go to a virtual office to meet with somebody to talk about a business opportunity, and I will be there dressed in my fancy outfit with the Louis Vuitton bag that I bought at the store, that it only exists because it's digital, only exists in this universe. Now, on the other end of the continuum, you have I can walk into an Apple store, look at the computers, talk to the avatars of the salespeople, and talk just the way I would in the real world, only hopefully with a shorter lineup. We'll see. And actually buy something real that will be shipped to my house. Somewhere in, and so that's sort of the other far end of it. Now, then there are other things where you're just using it, let's say, as a branding opportunity, and let's say a richer version of social media. So, for instance, I mentioned law firms are practicing in the metaverse. Well, I can't really have somebody come in and I can't give them legal advice in the metaverse, because, as we'll see, any avatar can just walk in and interrupt my conversation. I can't lock the doors, really. But what the law firms can do is put up a virtual space, have an employee there in their avatar form to answer any questions about what kind of work the firm does. They can direct them to, if the person says, well, I'd like to speak to a lawyer about a legal problem, they say, terrific, we will connect outside. We will set up a Zoom, we'll connect by email, whatever. So the actual transaction, if you call it that, will happen out in the real world. But the point of contact where you get found and sort of have that brand marketing opportunity is in the metaverse.
Okay, so I think we've sort of got around this, but let's start, because there's two questions. One is for a business who is a business owner, or a group of business owners that are not gamers, where this sounds like a foreign language, not just a new technology.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is how to get started. But before we get there, I want to ask you, say, it always starts with the business case, right? Like saying, describe the business case. Like, is there money in them Nar Hills? Because if there is, and if this is where things are really going, I guess I better get learned up on it, because if this is one of the channels for making money, or for revenue for your business, I better understand it. And then we'll come to how to get started. But
Sure.
I wonder what you think and I guess the business case for doing business in the metaverse, because it sounds like, for those of us that started maybe 5 or 8 years ago, I'm not sure, maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, I finally made the big jump to get into Twitter, because I was afraid of Twitter at the time. But now even and I think most people know, they got to be on these multi social media channels, right? Like it's standard fare. You got to be on Instagram, you got to be on Facebook, because people are on different platforms. So it has become mainstream. I don't think it was 10 years ago, but it is now. So maybe talk about the business case for the metaverse it's in its infancy, but where you see that business case going.
Right. So let me start by saying, I'm not here to sell anybody on this.
Mm.
If we're talking cybersecurity, I will try to sell you on taking measures to protect your business, all of that. That I'm an evangelist. This, I'm more of a skeptic, but it's fascinating. So the business case depends on what your business is, and who your customers are, and who your competitors are. So what I mean by that is, the reason that you would go into the metaverse to do business is the same reason you would go anywhere to do business, is that's where your customers are, or that's where your competition is. So the example of the personal injury law firm setting up a shop in the metaverse, why are they doing that? Because their clients are just regular human beings who get into accidents, car accidents, slip and falls, whatever. They are making the gamble that a lot of those people are either participating in the metaverse now or will be in the future, because it's got, the shiny objects, right? They'll go there to do gaming. They'll go there to meet friends virtually, that sort of a thing. So they'll be there. And because they're there, they'll be, the business is there as well. They can be found, and they can come and speak to them if they want to look for a lawyer. The notion here is that over time, people will be so ingrained in using this. It's like the internet, right? You don't look up a number in your phone book anymore. If you're trying to find a business, you look it up online. If you are immersed in the metaverse all the time, that's where you're going to look for your lawyers. That's where you're going to look for your plumbers. That's where you're going to look to buy products. Are they right about that? No idea yet. It may make more sense for big companies that are trying to do really splashy advertising marketing campaigns and want to provide an immersive experience, because they know that their potential customer base is everybody, and that includes people that are on the metaverse, right? So for instance, Samsung has a really interesting giant virtual sort of display space for events that they host, to sort of generate talk about new products that are coming. They do product launches, demos, that sort of a thing. Sotheby's has a virtual art gallery that you can tour if you want to go in and look at the art. So if you think your customers are there or are going to be there as the technology becomes more widely adopted and cooler, frankly, because right now, as we'll see, some of this is a little clunky. I'm going to show you a video of it rather than actually taking you through it in real time, because it would blow up my computer to try to run that platform and Zoom at the same time. So that's a problem. And I have a pretty good laptop. So it's early stages now. And I think what we're seeing is businesses that are going in, especially the small businesses that are going in, are doing it kind of like, it's a bit like staking a claim in the gold rush, right? I'm not sure that this is going to amount to anything, but if there is, I want to be there first. And I also want to be able to have the bragging rights of saying I was there before my competitors, because it makes me look innovative, makes me look forward thinking. There realistically are some kinds of services where this may never make sense. But the other thing I should have said earlier is, in terms of applications, like you're in a tech corridor, right? A tech hub in Waterloo. You've got companies that are designing products, providing training on things that are fairly technical and sophisticated. They can do that through the metaverse. I can, with the right tools, I can show somebody how to do maintenance on a piece of equipment they've bought from me through a simulation through the metaverse. And I can walk them through it and they can do it. I mean, you could do this with surgery if you wanted to, technically speaking, down the road. I'm not recommending that. And but you get the idea, right? Like there's ways of interacting with people over great distances. There's other things you can use this for other than just selling. It could be also supporting your customers and helping them use and maintain your products, that sort of thing. So those are some of the ways that this could end up being relevant to businesses.
I guess the reason I raise that, and I think it'll come up through some of the other questions I have for you, but as an example, you use a good one. I mean, everyone from time to time needs a plumber. I mean, your dishwasher breaks, your washing machine, or you have a leak. And so for a small business, many of that would be in the plumbing space or electricians, as an example. So trades are a great example. Is this somewhere where they could play, because in geographically, I guess that's some of the challenges. Do I get involved in it? And geographically, I'm not going to North Bay to do an electrical job, but I can do one around here. But it sounds like it could be accessible for a small business. And I guess that's the difference that I think we want to try and get at is, how do you see a small business with more of a limited budget and time to be able to be in the metaverse versus larger business? But it maybe have some of that ability to level the playing field for a small versus a large business. But let us go on. How do you get started in this? Like, I mean, I hear you. You've done a very good job of articulating it. It's not something that I do a lot of, but I kind of can picture now what the general concept is for a business that is going, okay, well, a younger client base, or I think this is where I want to be, or I kind of like gaming myself, so I want to understand it more. It sounds like it's not expensive. It should or has the potential to be affordable for a business to be in the metaverse. But how does a business get started, and what are the questions they need to ask?
Sure. So I'm going to take that question two ways. One, what do I actually do to get started? And second of all, what's the approach as a business I take to it? What do I actually do? You set up an account. I would say start off by getting in there and playing, poke around. And with most of these platforms, you can set up an account for free. You don't have to have a crypto wallet. You don't have to give much in the way of personal information. I think for Decentraland, I had to give an email address, and I could have set up a dummy Gmail address if I'd wanted to. They're not verifying my identity, so I don't have to give anything away to go in and just explore. Doesn't cost me a cent. Doesn't cost me really much in the way of personal data. And poke around and see what other businesses are doing, and ask yourself, does this look like something my customers are going to care about now? Well, how about in 10 years when the technology is more prevalent and the barriers to entry to use the technology? And again, I talked about the laptop example. 10 years from now, it's more likely that everyone is going to have a computer at home that's capable of handling these platforms easily. So maybe that's when it's going to make sense. Now, do I want to be there before they get there? Maybe. I have to think about that. So the very basic, simplest way is I just go in and create an avatar and start looking around at things. If I want to be a little more involved, I could be, let's say, buying from suppliers in the metaverse. I set up a crypto wallet. I have currency in it, and now I can do basic transactions. If there's things that are useful to my business kinds of business I could transact in the metaverse that are useful to my business. That's a pretty low key, easy way of getting involved in it. Now, at this point, I'm still not there present as a bit in the business in the sense that I'm not marketing. I don't have a space. The next level of that would be setting up a virtual space. Now, it could just be a billboard. It could just be advertising in someone else's space somewhere in the metaverse. It could be a virtual storefront or office, and these can be very simple. The virtual office of the law firm I was giving you the example of is one room on the ground floor in a not expensive part of the metaverse. And we'll come to the real estate piece in a minute, I think, because that's an important part of the cost of entry here. it's like one virtual room with my logo for my firm there and a desk and a virtual avatar that's my front desk employee who's wearing an Oculus headset in the office or possibly working from home and is there to answer basic questions about my business. And I can have someone code this for not a lot of money. So that would be sort of that's the very basic to more complicated, but we're still talking modest, I would say, right? We're not building a palace here where we're not inviting a famous band to come and play at a stadium we've designed, right? Like this is still these are still low stakes. So that's mechanically, digitally, how this would work. Now, the business approach, I think, is similar, right? You start off small, I would say, where what you're really just aiming for is to establish a footprint there. And again, some of this is just being able to say you did it. This personal injury firm, I never would have heard of. They're in the United States. There's no reason I would know they exist, but I know they exist now because they've got an office in the metaverse. For some kinds of business, that kind of publicity makes sense and is maybe valuable in its own right. But again, you can start small, start modest, and then if you start to see your payoff in this, or if you start to see your competitors are doing more, then you can decide to do more, right? Buy more space, build more in terms of how rich the experience is, use it for more things, right? More interactive. Like a gaming experience where your products are featured, that sort of a thing. So you can probably spend as much time and effort on this as you want. And the key is for a small business to decide, is it worth doing it all? And if it is, how much is enough? And maybe you scale this up later. Now, I'd mentioned before that in terms of the cost of this, if I want to set up a virtual office or a virtual storefront, I'm going to have to buy virtual land. And this is a thing that people are doing. Again, somebody paid $4.8 million, I think, to have a virtual property next to a virtual mansion that Snoop Dogg is setting up. And they want to, I guess, be able to peer over the virtual fence. So that's something that to them was worth money. Other plots of land in these universes are worth a lot less. And so, there are good neighborhoods and bad neighborhoods in the sense that there are ones that are very desirable because of what they're close to, and others where they're sort of out in the middle of nowhere. Now, you don't have to drive there, so that doesn't matter, right? You just sort of punching in coordinates and you go. But just to give you a sense, in one of the platforms I showed you, Decentraland, last year, virtual real estate sales were 110 million in the US. In the Sandbox, which is another one, 350 million US. And last year, a Toronto-based company, actually a Toronto-based subsidiary of a Toronto-based company, paid 2.5 million for virtual land in Decentraland's fashion district. It has a fashion district, just like actual Toronto. So these are all from, and this is not hard information to find. This is from a CBC report that I'm giving you these numbers. So some of it is, I'm going to buy a cheap plot of land in a platform that is not the most expensive, but is one where my customers might actually go. Because here's the other piece of this, unfortunately, Ian, because we don't know who's going to win these platform wars, I don't know which one's going to be the one that my customers are going to end up being on. So some of the law firms, some of the other businesses are setting up virtual businesses, offices, storefronts on many of the platforms, or at least a couple. So they're hedging their bets about which one's going to emerge at the end of all this as the most successful, because it's sort of like the early days of social media where you had Facebook and MySpace and now it's pretty much Facebook. That's sort of where we are with this technology.
Well, I've got some questions to kind of drill down on that a little bit, but maybe,
yeah.
And I think you've got some video. I think maybe this is the time, like what was very useful, the video of Tom Cruise in the Minority Report, to describe that he's in the real world and that potential for having that augmented reality, because that brought some clarity to it. But you got some other video of some of these platforms you're talking about. Maybe walk through, and then I think it'll become clear, small business versus big business, type of business. What are the things? Why would you buy, quote, pretend, or not, I don't know, pretend's not the word, but virtual real estate, and how would you make value of that? But let's look at some of this video. You describe, I think you're going to do a sort of a voiceover and describe what we're watching here.
Yeah, we can, and you and I can keep talking. There's no audio share on this, so I'll tell you what you're looking at, but feel free to ask questions as you go. Now, first of all, are you seeing Decentraland?
Yep, got it.
So I'd mentioned earlier on, if you want to just, the starting point with all this is just to jump in and poke around. So here's how you do that. So here's a video I did last night. And again, I did it as a short video because if I tried to launch the platform, it would blow up my computer doing that in Zoom at the same time. So I've just now clicked on as a guest. Now, I already have an account here, but if I didn't, it would take me through a process now of quickly setting up an avatar. Now, here's some, the program takes a second to launch here, but you can see some of the messages flashing through here. It's advertising saying buy real estate, buy NFTs, which we haven't talked about yet, telling you some of the things you can do here while you're here, create scenes, artwork, and so forth. All right, so here I am. I've now emerged in the metaverse in Decentraland, and here's my avatar. Looks just like me, except virtual. And this is the plaza that you open into when you first launch into the program. So, and it's the video's a bit jerky. I apologize. That's just, again, a limitation of, the technology runs a little bit, a bit junky. So let's say this is the stage where I was creating an avatar. I'm going to change up what I'm wearing here. Now, this is just the basic package. I haven't paid any crypto to buy anything here. None of it's branded, but I'm going to go with the kilt. I'm feeling Scottish. All right. Yeah. Am I happy with the flipper shoes? I'm going to keep the shoes. That's fine. So let's go back out into the plaza here. And you navigate this with keys, just the keys on your keyboard. You don't need special technology. Some of these platforms you can use using virtual headset goggles, especially Meta, because they make Oculus, which are the most easily available virtual reality headsets. And then you're moving through this in 3D as opposed to just looking at your computer screen. But these billboards give you an idea of what you can do, right? There's some gaming here. There's some contests, and I'm jumping down this fountain because I can't do that in real life, but I can do it here. And now I'm in a bar somewhere. There's a octopus serving drinks. One of them is going to start talking to me in a minute here, but any of these other things I could click on. There's the Dogecoin meme. So I've been welcomed here, asking me, so what are you up to here? I could be talking using my microphone, but I've just set it for chat here. So I'm just telling them, I'm just here taking some nice folks on a tour. So now I'm going to poke around a bit. I'm actually going to move forward a bit because I want to get to the point where I show you some things. So earlier here, you saw here this Genesis Plaza, the map. This is the thing that lets me move around in the universe. So that I can click on that and it will take me to the map where I've just been wandering around up to this point. Now I'm going to actually choose a location. Oh, I jumped too far ahead. Hang on. All right, so here it is. And there's coordinates for all these businesses. Samsung happens to be at 103.76, X and Y, just like on a graph. So now we've popped out to see the Samsung virtual space. Now, there happen not to be any events going on here late on a Tuesday night, but you get a sense of how impressive this space is. You can never build something like this in real life, but you can do anything virtually. And make it as stunning as you want. Now, as you zoom in here closer, you will see sort of a welcome screen they've got a list of events that are happening here. So if you pop up when those things are actually happening, you can participate in a virtual event, probably a product launch of some sort, that sort of a thing.
So that's it. They would do this if they're the latest version of the Samsung phone or a new TV or a 5K or for whatever the latest TV is or something. And they'd say, hey, come and join us. And you do this, you're watching this in the metaverse for an actual product that Samsung is wanting to either promote or obviously sell. So
yeah, but unlike the old days of product launches where you've got Steve Jobs, you're watching a YouTube video of Steve Jobs walking around in a turtleneck talking about an iPhone. Here you're actually there in the sense that you can walk around, you can control what you see, and you can interact with people while it's happening. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's the difference.
Yeah, no, but I think this was my earlier question when you're seeing that it is the virtual version, which is a different experience, but for a real world product in that case. So absolutely. For Samsung saying, I've got a new phone or some sort of new technology, this would be one of the ways they're trying to get at the broad array of potential customers, which would be people that are using the metaverse or gaming, etc. Yeah.
So it's good for hype. It's a richer sales experience, if you want to put it that way. Now here I've gone back to the map and I've put in a different set of coordinates. I think I was looking for Walmart here. It wasn't at the coordinates I was told it was at. I have to say this platform, it's not as easy to get to things as you would want. You can't just input an address. You have to navigate the grid. I don't love that, but it's the way it works right now. So I never found Walmart, although I did see some very weird trees. Now, the Walmart would be an example of a place where I could go in and see what the products are. It's like browsing their webpage online, but I can see the products in 3D if I could have found it. So now I'm going to take you to, I believe, yeah, here's the virtual law office that I've been talking to throughout this. And the reason I like to use this as an example is this is more like I think what a small business would do with this. This is a small scale, start out kind of, I've staked I put a stake in the ground here, but I'm not blowing incredible amounts of money on coding or putting in something that requires a lot of technology to sort of access. I spent a couple of minutes here trying to find the door. So if you're frustrated by gaming, this is going to be a bit of a barrier to you. And I don't love it. My child who's on Roblox would be through here already. We probably have already negotiated a contract with the lawyers by this point. I'm still bumping into walls, but here we are. So you see, I found the front door to the office, and here's the signage on the outside. It's got their logo. It looks nice. You can see here they're telling you can follow us on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook. You can click on those and go to those environments. But I'm going to walk into their metaverse environment, dressed as I always do for the office in my kilt and my mohawk. So now I'm in the office, and here's the virtual desk. Now, what wasn't there on the day that I popped in there, because again, it was late, and they're, I think, in Florida. So when I popped in here, everyone would have gone home for the day, and there's nobody minding the virtual office or the real office. But you would have an employee sitting here in an avatar form. And I could sit down and say, tell me about what this law firm does. What are your, do you act on contingency? What are your hourly rates? That sort of a thing. Who do I talk to about this? And then they would say, well, let's take this out into the real world and we'll hook you up with a lawyer. But if it were a business, I could be looking at their catalog. I could be asking questions about their products and so on. So hopefully that gives you a sense. I'm going to stop the share here, but that gives you a sense of what the possibilities are for this. Again, on a small scale, as a small business starting out with this, and again, this is modest. It's some branding. It's a desk. It's a chair. It's a weird lamp and some plants I don't have to water. Not that bad.
Now, I'm interested. I guess my mind goes to, and it's probably because it goes to more traditional, right? So as a small business, and you say, we have one storefront. Always the trick is, how do you get people to know who you are, right? Word of mouth. You're going to try and do some advertising, as cheaply as possible. But in this environment, like if you were going to say, okay, well, I want to have a staff person that's available to answer questions, right? So somebody's got to be on the other end of a computer, and presumably it signals when someone's coming in and got questions. That could take someone, at least part of their job is to be available to answer those questions. But I guess where my mind goes is, how would you with your mohawk and your kilt happen to stumble onto it? And you already said there could be real estate that you want to be beside Snoop Dogg's house versus wherever this was in the desert. How would someone find that? I mean, is it just dumb luck that someone's going in the right part of that metaverse? Because as one would think, as it grows, it's going to get bigger, which means it almost becomes more difficult to be found, wouldn't it?
I would think that, and again, early days on this, and I may not even be using this properly, but I have not been able to find a mechanism to just look up a business like in a directory and zoom and sort of jump right to it. You saw me sort of transporting like in Star Trek. That's what I would expect to see. I'm surprised it's not there yet. I imagine it'll be there soon. So I think probably the key to that is these platforms are going to have the sort of a built-in directory that makes it easy. The way I knew how to go to these locations, I probably would never have the Samsung I could see, because as I was looking at the map, kind of like a Google map, I actually saw the word Samsung on it, but I already knew where to start looking because I looked up a bunch of locations on the internet. And it's not easy to find some of these places, right? Like you had, like the ones that I was able to show you, I found because I looked for articles about companies that had set up in Decentraland, and some of them will tell you what their coordinates are, and some of them don't. If they tell me what the coordinates are, I can then go to Decentraland and just navigate the grid. And you saw it's a little bit chunky, but I can get there. Minus 52. -103, and I'm there. And then I just hit a button and I'm in. So if your website or even the sign in your store says, visit us at Decentraland, coordinates 76-102. It's not ideal. They still have to remember to take a picture of it with their phone because nobody makes notes anymore and take it home and look it up on the computer. It's not ideal, but it's not terrible. But it would be better, would be if I can jump into Decentraland, go to that. I mean, you saw, or whatever platform it is, you saw when I first got there, there were those massive sort of computer terminal / billboards. Imagine it's like the mall where I walk up to one of those and I just input the name at that thing when you first go into a big mall and they've got the directory, and then it'll tell you on a map, or in this case, you would just click on it and go to it. So that's how I see it working eventually. And of course, the difference between this and real life is I don't have to drive through all those streets. I can just jump right to the location, but we're going to need to see better indexing. And these platforms at the moment are fairly crude, right? I'm not sure that most people at the moment are going to find this appealing enough to want to spend a lot of time here. But it's early days. It may be that when Meta comes out, because Meta's platform isn't really out yet, but when Meta launches its one, they're going to throw a lot more money at it than some of these other startups. That might be an experience that's rich enough, that and real enough feeling, and easy enough to navigate, intuitive enough that'll be easy for you to do and you'll want to do it.
Okay, now we've mentioned it a couple of times, and I made note of this, and I don't want to lose this before I've got a couple more questions before we run out of time. But you mentioned NFTs, and is that non-financial transactions or
non-fungible tokens? And this is a very confusing term.
Okay, so describe what those are inside of here. Again, this is where I think you will find a small business kind of saying, "Well, I'm kind of intrigued, but how does it all work?" Right? For them or their customers, is this truly? So talk about NFTs as it relates, I presume, to crypto and the way that this all works.
Sure. So again, NFT is something that it's built on blockchain technology, non-fungible token. Let's for the moment not worry about what we mean by non-fungible, but let me just sort of tell you what it is and what it isn't. A non-fungible token is essentially what if I buy an NFT, here's what I am buying. I am buying the right to say that I own an image of something. It could be a digital picture of something. It could be a digital short clip of something from a sports event. Some of those have been sold as NFTs. So it's a small bit of film. It could be an original painting, something like that. Now, do I get to buy it? Well, first of all, it doesn't exist in the real world because it's entirely digital. And I don't get to say I own it, but what I get to, like, I don't have anything I can download and keep, and there it is on my computer. It's nowhere else. It's always out there on the blockchain, but I essentially have something saying that I own that. What can I do with that? Well, I can sell it to somebody else for crypto. So it's fungible in the sense that you can trade it for something, or you can sell it for money. But what you can't do is, it's not fungible in the sense that a currency is. One Bitcoin is worth the same as another Bitcoin. So it's fungible in that sense, as it's a currency. So the NFT isn't a currency, it's a thing. But you can buy and sell it. Now, what's the value of that? You got me. The value is if someone will pay money for it, it's valuable, right? And so people have done this. People have spent. One example we were talking about a bit before we jumped on. Somebody bought, Jack Dorsey, who was the former president of Twitter, created and I think this was a charity sale, an NFT of the image of his first ever tweet. So kind of like Alexander Graham Bell's the recording of his first. Exactly, yeah. That, except it's an image of his first tweet. He sold it, and a crypto investor spent $2.9 million to buy it. That person tried to then sell that and wanted $48 million for it, and got $280, not million of dollars. So the market for this is wild and all over the place. But large brands are also creating these things too, and they're not terribly expensive, right? Like you can buy an NFT of some bit of advertising for a new burger that a fast food chain is putting out, or some image of a shoe that a company is putting out. These are actual, like, mass market examples of NFTs that we're seeing, and people are spending money on them. People are excited about them. So again, it's really functionally, it's a branding and marketing and hype opportunity for your brand. You're not really selling a thing that is, you can put a real world value to.
That sounds like my daughter's thing, because that does not. I don't see the logic in that, but there must be people that do. Again, talking about what they that they have access to this, because owning is a nebulous term in that sense, but but that's helpful because all of these terms are getting used and they're out there.
Yeah, I mean, my father-in-law used to say, if I can't drink it, smoke it, or wear it, I'm not interested in it. I can't do any of those things with an NFT. What I can do is brag on the internet that I own it.
Yeah. I'm not, but I mean, there's obviously some attraction to it because it's actually got a value.
And if your customers are interested in it, then it's value.
Of course. Okay, so as we got about 5 minutes or so. Let's talk about the risks, right? And business this will be one of the things that gets them from saying, it sort of sounds interesting, but I'm not prepared to take on much risk. What are the legal and business risks of doing business in the metaverse? Because if you get started on this, you got to know what your exposure potentially is, or how to manage any risk. No different than anything else that you're doing with your business.
Sure. So there's all kinds of different things. And most of us emerges from the fact that this is an emergent area, right? It's a wild west legally, because as with most things, the law tails the technology by sometimes decades. So property rights don't make a lot of sense in this context, right? How do I enforce my property? Let's say intellectual property, for instance. I own, I have a trademark and somebody is ripping it off and using it in the metaverse for something else. For instance, there's a video game called Grand Theft Auto, and they got sued because they put out a video game, and in the video game there was an image, a digital representation of a real world strip club, which then sued them because they're like, you can't use our image in your game. You didn't ask, you didn't pay. What if somebody is selling NFTs of your the symbol for your business and some new product you have, something like that? So how are you going to enforce on all that? How are you going to find these people to even do anything about it? So enforcing your intellectual property rights is going to be tricky. You're going to have to be monitoring it constantly. In fact, you probably have to, if you've got a brand that you're protecting, like a trademark, you're probably going to have to hire a service to monitor these platforms to see if anyone's ripping you off, selling things like digital representations of product that have your symbol on it, but you're not getting any money for it. And then there's just sort of there's more tangible kinds of liability, right? What if somebody hijacks your like a billboard in your store? I'm just making this example up, and broadcasts something incredibly graphic and upsetting, and somebody who's there in avatar form watching it is triggered by that and has an actual is damaged by that. In the real world, you could sue for that. Can you do that in the virtual world? And if it's not my fault, if somebody hacked me, but where's the liability? Let's say I'm collecting customer data, and this is where this is especially a problem for professional businesses like lawyers, like accountants, because we have customer client data that we have obligations to protect. Medical, for instance, as well. Let's say you're going to a virtual clinic to talk to a doctor. I can't control the safety. I have no control over the safety of that data if it's all passing through this blockchain. Because I don't control the platform. I'm just there like everybody else. It's like me being in the mall. I don't have any control over mall security. So how do I protect that data? What am I liable if it gets attacked? What if I have a dispute with the platform? What are my options? Well, in Decentraland, if I have a dispute with the platform over something, I can't sue them, it says. It says I have to submit to arbitration through the American Arbitration Association, and I have to do it in Panama. You're going to see variations on this with a lot of the platforms. If I have a beef with Meta over something that happens in their platform, I have to sue them in San Mateo, California. So where's my recourse? It's, some of this is going to be tricky. Let's say somebody, that's probably enough of an example. The short answer is this: a lot of the risks that the business risks and the liability risks that you have in the real world, you're going to have in the virtual world as well, because it's a representation of the real world, right? So a lot of the things that can happen to a person moving through the real world can happen to them virtually in this virtual space. Figuring out what you're going to do about that is tricky.
So maybe, this is we our friends at Cowan who give us kind of insurance risks on our radio show and so talk about and then folks like you folks at Gowling saying you got to manage your risk. A lot of this is about managing your risk and saying what are the what's possible versus what's likely and what are the risks that you're associated with. You have to as you're setting this up, do some homework with someone who knows the legal side of this, like yourself, or whoever is dealing with your business insurance, which is really your risk assessment around whether it's on cyber, and you do a lot on cyber. This touches a lot on cyber security. So, I mean, as you're getting into this, better to ask more questions at the outset, not just about how you would use it from a marketing and sales perspective, but how you manage the risk of what is a new technology when there are so many unanswered questions. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Absolutely. But the other thing I would point out is this. If I'm a company that has no presence on the metaverse whatsoever, let's say I'm a designer of high-end goods, and I've got trademark on those goods because, that's just a brand that people care and they want to buy. Somebody on the metaverse starts selling digital. Let's use the handbag example again. I'm a company that has no presence on metaverse, doesn't want to know it, not in there at all, not even monitoring it. But somebody is selling virtual handbags for people's avatars with my logo on it, and they're selling for thousands of dollars. I could sue them for that in their real life if they were making actual goods. We call them gray market actually, no, those would just be black market, like fakes, essentially. I can sue them for that because they're damaging my brand by doing it. But I don't know that I can't do that if I don't know it's happening, which means now I have to be watching out for this in the metaverse, whether I want to be there or not. So it's not even the companies that are participating, businesses participating in there actively that are going to have this headache. It's any business potentially. It's you as an individual. How do I know if I'm being defamed by people? An avatar is standing up and making a speech and saying terrible, terrible things about me that hurt my reputation in a virtual universe that I don't even know exists.
Yeah. This has been fascinating, and I wouldn't often say this because I'm an old dog, so learning new tricks is hard. But I feel I know a lot more about the metaverse now, and this is precisely what we wanted to do here today. So I really appreciate you joining us today. This has been a fascinating experience, and you're very articulate about it, and I think I'll leave this with you. We should have you on our radio show because for businesses will need to understand this, whether they're using it or not, for all the reasons you just pointed out. Maybe have you on to talk about that. And as things start to mature in this space, come back and see us, because this is clearly something that is not going to go away. The real question is how people should be a business, especially small and medium business size owners, how they should be taking advantage of it. So we really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks so much.
I love talking about this stuff. So anytime. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks again. And to our title sponsor of the series, a big thanks to Manulife, the platinum sponsor of today's series, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region. And finally, to all of you for joining us today. As a reminder, we do host a new business success series every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Join us next week for Canada's Immigrant Advantage. In this session, we'll learn about the work permit process and global skills strategy. You'll also receive information on where employers can find foreign workers and how they can retain them through permanent residence programs like Express Entry. Topics will also cover special IRCC measures that have been implemented to support employers and workers. To register and to find more about this and other upcoming events, please visit us at greaterkwchamber.com. And do share this series with your friends and colleagues. Join us every Wednesday for another edition of the Business Success Series, because if it's Wednesday, it is the Business Success Series. Thanks so much and have a great afternoon. Great job.